Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like you know to check the date of the big game first, before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger Delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
Is anyone out there?
Another salesperson enduring the endless search. Exhausting. If you want to get right to the right conversations, you need LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Whether you're looking for new leads or strengthening existing relationships at your top accounts, get right to the right conversations with LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Try LinkedIn Sales Navigator now with a free 60-day trial at linkedin.com/trial. That's linkedin.com/trial.
Terms and conditions apply!
Welcome to the Putback here on SNY.TV. I'm Ian Begley, SNY's NBA insider, and we're going to break things down with the Knicks and the rest of the NBA for the next 30 minutes or so. Got 2 great guests with me today. Got Alex B., Knicks Central on Twitter, and also co-host of the Bad Weather Fans podcast. They do a great job with the Knicks and the Nets over there. And we've got my friend Yossi Gozlan. Yossi, fantastic with the salary cap, breaking things down for all teams around the NBA. You can find him on Twitter at Yossi Gozlan, and you could also find him on YouTube, where he does a great job with video breakdowns. So we're going to break things down here in a moment. But before we get started, be sure to leave your questions in the comment section below. We'll get to some questions at the end of the show in our segment, The Talkback. And also,
CarMax knows that finding the right car is all about exploring your options, like the option to shop your way on your schedule. At CarMax, you can browse, compare, and pre-qualify online, then finish up at the store, or simply start on the lot. The choice is yours. Because at CarMax, you're in the driver's seat. Start the search for your next car today at CarMax, the way car buying should be.
remember, we are now available via podcast form, so be sure to check us out there if you're so inclined, anywhere you download your podcasts. As always, we're going to get started here with the baseline. Knicks winning 2 in a row. They're back-to-back here, Atlanta and Brooklyn. And not easy. It wasn't pretty, but anytime you can win back-to-back games, you chalk that up as a success in this league. And that Nets team is tough, so playing them the second game of back-to-back, not easy, not as easy as you would think it would be on paper. Alex, I want to start with you. Your thoughts on the Knicks over the last 2 games.
I think the Hawks game was a tough matchup. It was, national TV. Well, was it national TV? I don't know. Was it Martin Luther King Day, 3:00? A lot of spotlight on them, and it was a tough battle up and down. It's always tough when Trae Young comes to the Garden, and I think they, it was a hard game. They pulled it out, and then the next day, you kind of overlook the Nets a little bit, and you're exhausted from playing 19 games in 34 days for the Knicks, and they finally at the end of that big gauntlet part of their schedule, and they go 13-6 in that time, and it was great. But I think that they started off slow against the Nets, and then picked it up, and the fourth quarter, I think they just got gassed, and then Jalen Brunson just decided, I'm going to take over, and we're winning this game. I'm not letting us lose to these bums in the Barclays Center, because they had no business. The Nets didn't want to win, but they wanted it more. The Nets did. They crashed the glass, and the Knicks couldn't keep up with them. They're really missing Mitchell Robinson or somebody down there to help out Towns on the boards. It was getting out of control. But you know what? They win the 2, and the Knicks are solidly in the 3rd seed, and there's nothing to be upset about. To me, I mean, it's a little scary that the Nets cut it close, but you know what? You beat the Hawks. You own Trae Young, and you beat the Nets, and you keep this the Nets down, little brother down a little bit.
Is it a rivalry, Alex? Because I think, look, if Jalen Brunson doesn't hit those shots late, the conversation is so much different because of you're losing to a team that's essentially tanking, and also it's the Brooklyn Nets. Does that matter, you think, to the Knicks fan base and to you?
It matters to me. Yeah. I think it's a big, I think it's a rivalry. I think location wise, division wise, conference wise, it just compared to a game versus the Hornets. Is it the same buzz as when they play the Nets? No, of course not, because that's not a rivalry with the Hornets. But with the Knicks and the location, and then everything that happened with Durant and Kyrie in 2019, and when they moved to Brooklyn and they were talking smack, with Garnett, so I think that's the rivalry there. It's always the regional stuff is always going to go. Like, look at the Mets and the Yankees. They're rivalries, and they're not even in the same league. But there's trash talk, and they didn't even play each other until the late 90s. There was always a rivalry there. So, it's a rivalry. And I know there's the rivalry police that are out there. Like, they need to specify what's a rivalry. You need to play in the playoffs 3 times and lose. One person has to win, one team has to lose, and et cetera, et cetera. But it's a rivalry. It might not be, Knicks and Bulls in the 90s or Knicks and Pacers in the 90s, but it's a rivalry for sure.
I want to talk about a lot of salary cap stuff, trade machinations with Yossi Gozlan and Alex, yourself. Before we get there, though, just Josh Hart. I think that he has done such a great job fitting into his role with this starting 5. To me, that was one of the bigger questions coming into the year, even after the Julius Randle trade, was you're asking Josh Hart to take on a lesser role, to probably take fewer shots than he had been earlier in his tenure as a Knick, and he's filled that role as well as I think the Knicks could have hoped for, between his rebounding, his assists, his willingness to move the ball and to push the ball and to find his teammates. He's just been so valuable. So, Yossi, I'm curious for you. Knicks sent Cam Reddish and a first to Portland, essentially, for Josh Hart a couple trade deadlines ago. You're tracking all these trades. Is that one of the best trades in the NBA in the past few years? How do you see that?
Absolutely. The Knicks have just done a lot of the best moves, like not just trades, free agency signings. You don't realize it at the time until later after the fact. Signing Isaiah Hartenstein, Josh Hart, just a very shrewd move that just seemed like they were bringing in a guy that would help come off the bench, but his role is totally elevated. And I'm curious to see if they're able to replicate something like that, if they're able to just doesn't have to be a Josh Hart level type player, but just bring in someone that is probably being a little undervalued right now and maybe get him for a pretty low cost.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks. It's funny because they traded for Josh Hart and then they extended him. And the number that they extended him, I had many people calling me, or I should say several people calling me, just saying, look at this. It's a CAA special, Leon Rose and company taking care of a CAA guy. But look, we're here now, and the contract is going to look very good. I think as the cap continues to increase, it's going to look like a value deal if Josh Hart can continue to play the way he has been. And Alex, what do you make of the way he's been embraced by the fan base? Is it accurate to say that? Is he one of those guys where it's kind of like an Oakley, a Starks, where his passion is embraced by these fans?
Oh, yeah, for sure. He's the heart and soul of the team. No pun intended. He really is. Towns and Brunson are the stars, and he's the heart and soul. He is the gas of the Knicks car, and I think the fans have embraced him. He's got a great sense of humor. He's, cursing at Reggie Miller. He's doing all these things that we love as a Knicks fan. And, Brunson does the same thing. Like they know how to play to the crowd and the Knicks fans, and they do it very well. And Josh Hart to this Knicks team is what Draymond Green was to the Warriors, just without the cheap shots, and he's going to help them in their championship run, over the next couple of years. And he's going to do all little things, borderline triple-double every game. And he does everything. And, when he can get hot in the playoffs like he did last year and hit some threes, hit some open threes and bury Philly, so he is the perfect player, and I kind of underrated him coming in, because you just look at the numbers. I'm not watching all the Blazers or the Pelicans games where he was in the past and Lakers when they stunk. But Josh Hart is really, really, really good. He really is, an unheralded type of player that you don't get to appreciate until you see him every day.
Yeah, I agree with that last sentiment. You're watching him every day. You're knowing what he does for a team and how he contributes to winning. And it's been really to the highest level the Knicks could have hoped for, to me, this year. So just great stuff from Josh Hart. Right now, we're going to switch gears and we're going to go to the trade machine. We're going to get into some hypothetical deals and we're going to talk about the deals, dissect the deals with Yossi. I'm going to check in with Alex to see what he thinks about them. And we're going to start here with Mitchell Robinson going to Charlotte for Josh Green, straight up. Yossi, can you talk to us about the details of why this works and what money-wise would be going on here?
So before Nick Richards got traded, there were a lot of speculation on maybe the Knicks would want to go after him, and they certainly could have beaten the Suns' offer for him. They have way more second-round picks offer, but clear that they didn't see him as quite an upgrade over Mitchell Robinson or Precious Achiuwa for that matter. So I do think that they mostly need another wing to come off the bench. And Josh Green, not quite living up to his contract right now, but just another guy, I think, that he brings some defensive toughness. And the Knicks, like I said, they just need someone. Maybe he's a guy they can bring him in. They can get him straight up for Mitchell Robinson. So the Knicks are over the first apron. They have to decrease salary or not take back more, mainly, in any trade they do. So if they do want to trade Mitchell Robinson and they feel comfortable relying on Precious Achiuwa and Jericho Sims and Porty as their primary big men, maybe someone else could pop up in the buyout market. Who knows? They could, I think, getting a guy like Josh Green or some other wing in that like $10 to $15 million range could really bolster their bench.
Yeah, one thing where I go here is, Tom Thibodeau, the last couple of games, has gone back to Landry Shamet a bit, and he's expanded the rotation a bit. Guys off the bench, you've seen them in double-digit minutes where you haven't seen that in the past. So I just wonder if the need is there ultimately for another wing. I'm sure Josh Green could help them, but I wonder if that's where they go. And Alex, turning to you, your thoughts on this hypothetical.
Oh, no way. No way, because Mitchell Robinson to me is Josh Green's a nice player, don't get me wrong, but Mitchell Robinson to me is so valuable based on when he can be healthy and on the floor. You can't find that on the open market, especially for a guy like Josh Green, especially if Tibbs is not going to trust Jericho Sims, which he doesn't. He wasn't playing for a couple games, and then when Towns is out, he starts. So, he doesn't trust Sims to give him 5-10 minutes, but he trusts him to start, which is bizarre. But because you don't trust Sims, I'm not trading Mitch without having another big on the bench that you can trust in the playoffs, or to get that big offensive rebound that Mitch does in the playoffs, that get that big play. For Josh Green, I'm gonna say hard no. He's a nice player, but not for Mitch. I think that it scares me to trade Mitch at this point. 26 years old, PTSD from Marcus Camby. I feel like once he's going to get healthy soon, and then he's going to lead the league in blocks and win Defensive Player of the Year for another team, and then I'm going to be upset. So
I understand that.
It
definitely would have made a lot more sense if they were able to get Nick Richards back as well. So
right,
if it was like Green and Richards for Mitchell and Precious and picks, I'm sure that would have changed that dynamic a lot.
For sure.
Yeah, and I want to be clear too. Yossi put these trades together for us as a way to kind of look at the money and what might work, what might not work. He's not out here banging the drum for these deals to be made. A quick note on Nick Richards.
Pull up the dogs, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Quick note on Nick Richards. Yeah, I know there was interest, as we reported, in the offseason on Richards. I didn't get the sense that there was interest more recently. I know that had been reported in some corners. I don't think that's accurate. So that's kind of how it shook out with Richards. But let's get to deal number two. Deal number two, we've got Mitchell Robinson and Precious Achiuwa going to Atlanta for Bojan Bogdanovic. Now, this obviously you're adding a great player, a great reserve off your bench. You're consolidating two of your bigs to do so. So it leaves you obviously thin at the five. But Yossi, can you talk to us about combining Mitchell Robinson and Precious Achiuwa's salary and how that works with this deal? It could work with others.
So, like I mentioned, since they're over the first apron, they can't take back more salaries than they're sending out. And since they're below the second apron, they could still aggregate. So they could still combine Precious and Mitchell and take back like an $18, $19 million player at most. So this is just kind of like the high end of the salary range that the Knicks could take back for them. Now, Bogdan Bogdanovic was a guy that I thought could be a pretty nice addition for the Knicks before the season started, right after they did the Karl-Anthony Towns trade to replace Dante DiVincenzo. Having a bit of a down season now, So and also I think doesn't. I'm not. They don't really need. I don't think they really need him. Thanks to how good their guard rotation has been off the bench. But just as an example, someone that they could still like get to that salary number if they wanted to bring someone that expensive.
And similarly to that, if you added campaign to a Mitchell Robinson, obviously that gets you to a higher salary number 2. Alex, your thoughts on that deal?
No, thanks as well. I think
Alex,
you're giving up too much
words. I like it.
Mitchell Robinson is too valuable, and then you're giving up Precious as well. Like, what is if there's another move that's going to get you a big man on the bench as well, then maybe. But trading Mitch and Precious for the worst Bogdanovich, I don't know that I'd want to do that. I just feel that Precious is a big value to that locker room, and Mitchell Robinson is the longest tenured Knick. These are guys that are part of the core team. And for somebody like Bogdanovich, who has been the enemy for a while as well, it's weird. I mean, he fits on paper, but like I said, there needs to be another move to get a big man on the bench, especially if you're not going to trust Jericho Sims. So,
one note on Precious: I mean, he did waive the no trade clause that he could have had in his contract when he re-signed with the Knicks this offseason. I think that was a big element to those negotiations. Take that for what it's worth. But also, you saw Tom Thibodeau go to Achua late last night against the Nets, tight game. Achua was in there for Karl Towns for defense, and Thibodeau said he did a really nice job, did what he was looking for him to do. So it's clear that Knicks value Achua for what he brings on that end of the floor, particularly, I assume, as a guy who can switch and a guy whose versatility is valuable. So, yeah, the stacking of Robinson and Achua becomes complicated to me if you're not getting back a big who you can plug in there for 25 minutes a night. So we'll see how it shakes out. So let's get to deal number 3. And deal number 3, Mitchell Robinson and Precious Achua. Again, going out to San Antonio for Harrison Barnes. And Yossi, the Barnes, is it just similar to Bogdanovich with Barnes, where it's the salaries work and it's the Knicks kind of bolstering their bench? Is there any other elements to this deal that you want to talk about from a cap perspective?
Yes, so they would actually be able to address that big man need in the same deal. They still have enough room under the second apron to take back a guy like Charles Bassey, who's been having one of his better seasons. Again, not same level of player as either Mitchell Robinson or Precious Achua, but here they get a solid wing and Harrison Barnes to come off the bench, help relieve some of the other wing players. And if that's something they'd be interested in, taking in Charles Bassey as well, still keep a little bit more front court depth, but just like another deal that, again, like the higher end of the salaries that the Knicks could potentially make work.
Right. And Alex, for you, this one, bringing back Bassey too. Let's throw that in the hypothetical. Is it no way? Maybe.
It's intriguing if it were like 5 years ago for Harrison Barnes, but right now, like, I don't know, like if you're bringing back a big, sure, that sounds cool. But at the same time, right now, I don't know if I do that for the same reasons I've been mentioning, but it's just, the apron is just so frustrating. It's kind of like the movie, nobody understands the cloud. Nobody understands the apron. It's just the Knicks don't want to go over the first apron and they're going to the second apron, whatever. But Harrison Barnes is a good player, nice player, playoff experience, won a championship. He'd be a great player on the team, but I don't know if I'm giving up, Mitchell Robinson for that and Precious. I just feel that, like I said, is Mitchell Robinson coming back? That's the whole point. Is he coming back at all? I don't know. That's the question, really. If he's coming back, even if it's next month, even if it's March, I'm not trading him. So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later.
All right.
Before we move on, though, another reminder to throw your questions in the comments wherever you are. We're going to answer some of them in the Talkback segment later on with Mr. Matthew Spenley. Now we are going to move on to what we learned. What we learned is presented by Binghamton University. Binghamton University was named the top school in the SUNY system according to recent rankings from the Wall Street Journal and Forbes. Visit binghamton.edu for more. We're going to get into some trade rumors right now with the What We Learned section. And we were just talking about the Spurs. One thing to note there is I know that Zach Collins His name has come up in talks with the Spurs and other teams. Collins under contract, I believe, for this year and next year. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. Obviously, a veteran there, and Spurs kind of have discussed him with other teams. The interesting thing today, obviously, is Jimmy Butler. And, when Phoenix makes that trade with Utah to acquire 3 firsts, to turn their 1 first to 3 firsts, it's clear as day. They feel that they have something where they can go and get Jimmy Butler. What it turns out to be, we'll see in the coming days here, but you don't make that trade if you're Phoenix without knowing that you can get something done for Jimmy. And so it's just a matter of where Bradley Beal ends up. If you're watching the Suns, if you listen to Brad Beal after he was relegated to the bench, he's not happy there. He's not thrilled with the situation. So shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone that he'd be open to waiving his no trade clause for the right situation. And we'll see how that shakes out. But something else that I thought was interesting, and could be interesting for the Knicks, was when Phoenix was looking for those extra picks, those extra firsts that they got from Utah, they touched base with Detroit, and also Milwaukee and Denver touched base with Detroit, trying to get additional draft compensation that I assume that they would want to add in another deal. That's relevant to the Knicks because Milwaukee obviously is right there in the East. And if they're looking for extra picks, it tells you that they're looking to be aggressive and trying to upgrade that roster in some way, shape, or form. So something to keep an eye on for Knicks fans. And as far as the Knicks go, Alex, I think it's still kind of what we've been talking about. And we're going to talk about Valanciunas. We're going to talk about Capela a little bit later, but it's where's Mitchell Robinson? Do we trust that he's going to be back? Do we trust that he can be the guy for us? Ran into Mitch in the locker room a couple of days ago. He looks good, man. He looks, in shape. He said he's around 265 pounds. Tom Thibodeau, again, has said that he expects Robinson to be cleared for practice to take contact by the end of January. And I do think that there's a belief that Robinson could be back mid-February, early February, back on the floor. So if you know that and you're the Knicks, are you confident enough to roll the dice with Robinson? Do you have to look elsewhere for a trade? That's been the question for New York, and it'll continue to be the question for New York. The other option for them, as we talked about with Yossi, is stacking contracts, whether it's an Achua, and I do think that that's kind of the most likely package if the Knicks decided they were going to stack contracts. That's the one that would make the most sense. But yeah, it's kind of a waiting game here for the Knicks still with the trade process. Yossi, I'm curious, for you, when you look at Milwaukee, what do they have to do actually to try to add one of these significant players that's out there? Because it's not just one step, right? Given where they are, what do they have to do?
So, quickly, I just want to touch on that first part you were saying about how everyone seems to think that what Phoenix did is a precursor to a Jimmy Butler trade. Feels kind of like when the Cavs 10 years ago, they dumped Jared Allen and a couple of players to create cap space. And then we all knew what it was for. 4 days later, they signed LeBron. So
right.
It does kind of feel like there's some inevitability. I don't think the Suns did this just to get more draft picks. No. But as far as the Bucks, yeah, they can still add a $50 million max player. It seemed at first, like when it was reported that they might get in the mix for Jimmy Butler, I was thinking, well, how can they do that? They can't really. They're over the second apron. They're not going to be able to send a player who makes more, but they're actually pretty close to the second apron. That as long as they finish below it, they could still aggregate multiple salaries to exceed Bradley Beal's $50 million. So if they send out Middleton, Portis, and Pat Connaughton, that's $53 million. So you can send out those three to take on a player like Beal or Levine or Butler, who's making around $50 million. And they would still need to just send out another player like a Marjon Beauchamp, who they already declined this team option for next year. He's not on the rotation, and they'd be able to get back to 14 players, because they're going to decrease a bunch of roster spots, doing a 3-for-1, 4-for-1, and while still being able to stay below the second apron. So it's possible. I guess the question is, do they need to send out picks? Like you were saying, they're trying to gather some more. if they're taking Beal, I would probably want the pick. But it is possible they could make it work. And if they have an interest in Beal, that would definitely help the Suns a lot get this thing down to the finish line.
Yeah, that's the biggest item for everybody. All the teams kind of looking for a move or a significant move is where's Jimmy go? That's the first domino. And I want to get into, guys, also the idea that the Knicks, they could end up with one of these big guys that we've talked about a lot, Jonas Valanciunas, Clint Capela. Yossi, for you, Valanciunas, can you take us through how a deal sending Valanciunas to New York might work?
The easiest would be just to send out Mitchell Robinson straight up for him. That works for both teams. And, I don't know if they have to include second round picks. I imagine that's what the Wizards would want. I think I would just keep Mitchell Robinson at that point, though, unless they really feel like the injuries are going to be a reoccurring thing. I think they could probably also get there if they do Precious and a couple minimum salaries. That might work. Haven't done the full math exactly, but same thing. I think I'd rather just keep Precious at that point. Did you mention another player, or was it just Jonas?
I'm going to start with Jonas, and then we'll go to Clint. But I want to ask Alex first the idea of, Valanciunas for Mitch, yay or nay?
I'm like 50-50 on Jonas. I go back and forth on him. I know he used to be a beast on the boards. And, I know he's a little older now and he's slowed down a little bit. So I don't know. It also depends on, the same thing we've been saying all show, Mitchell Robinson's health. But I would even take 80% of Mitchell Robinson over Jonas Valanciunas at this point. So probably a no for me, but I can get talked into it if it's the right deal and the Knicks get maybe something else back, like a pick or something in the trade. I know that probably won't happen, or even a second or just something, but I'd rather keep Mitch, in that regard. But Jonas is one of those that I'm like, maybe,
Yeah, I think the market for him will be to the point where the Knicks probably would have to give up maybe a second,
right,
to get him here, because there's going to be interest in him by many teams who need a big, including the Lakers. So we'll see how that shakes out. And also the Knicks obviously had interest in Valanciunas in the offseason, and I feel confident in saying that if they decided to not move on from Mitchell Robinson, but decided that they could not go forward with Mitchell Robinson as the backup center, then Valanciunas would be one of their main targets if they pivoted. But I still think, my best guess is that they're waiting on Robinson. They feel comfortable that he'll ultimately make it back, and that's the way they want to go in a perfect world if things continue to progress. But I want to talk, too, about another big guy who has been available on and off for the last 3 or 4 years, and now he's at a place where he's a bit older, but Clint Capela in Atlanta. Yossi, how could the Knicks make that one work? Is it as easy as Mitch for Clint? Are there other machinations there?
So I looked into this one recently, and I find this one probably the most unlikely out of everything else we discussed. This would have been a lot more possible earlier in the offseason before they did the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. But now he makes about $20 million. And then he also has some extra $2 million in unlikely incentives. So no, I'm sorry, he makes $22 million plus those incentives. So the Knicks have to treat him like a $24 million player. So they not only need to send out Mitchell Robinson and Precious, who combined for 20, they probably need to send out like another 2 minimum players. So now you're also into Sims, Kolek, Campaign, and then I'm not even sure that even makes it work at the end, because they still need to stay below the second apron and get back to 14 players. I think that's a bit too much at that point. So just like Clint just makes a little too much money for this to work. I think the Knicks are much more likely to get some of the other big men options that we discussed.
Right. Alex, I'm not even going to ask you about that one because it's too pricey for a guy.
Got the roster for Capela. Why not? Yeah.
maybe 4 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
But I did forget to mention, thank you for the reminder, Yossi, Jericho Sims. We've talked about it again for a while now. Knicks, I think they'll continue to listen on Sims, up until the trade deadline. And I don't know, I can't tell you right now if a deal is definitely going to happen, but just the way things have kind of trended to this point, I'd be a little bit surprised if nothing happened. But we see that sometimes with, teams and players where, they want to the whole world thinks a deal is going to happen just because of various circumstances, and then it kind of fizzled out. But I do think we're still at the point where, to quote Brian Windhorst, I think we'll still be in the deal zone for a while on Sims. Haven't heard anything that leads me to believe otherwise. And Alex, your thoughts on if a trade were to materialize there, the Knicks, say they get draft compensation or a player, what would you prefer them to get back there for Sims, who's not making a lot of money, so it's really hard to make a trade for a player if it's just Sims?
I don't see the point of trading him just to get a draft pick. He's a good insurance piece just in case there's an injury, to Mitch again when he comes back, which is likely, or Towns. You need a body there and somebody that's experienced and he's been around the block. He's now playoff experience his whole career and with the Knicks. And, he can jump out of the gym, and we all know he has the physical capabilities to play well. It's just there, the IQ really isn't there, so, and he hasn't really developed at the pace that, a Deuce McBride did under Tibbs. And it's unfortunate. I really like him and I was rooting for him, but I still don't see the point of getting rid of him just to get rid of him at this point in the season. Maybe next year, or maybe if there's somebody on the buyout market that's coming that is coming, sure, then we can get rid of Sims and get some draft compensation for him and see how that goes. But to trade him just to trade him, I don't really see the point in that, to get a second round pick or something. That doesn't make any sense.
And Yossi, just to be clear, that with his salary, that's I can't tell you the exact number, but it's low. Knicks would need to acquire a player at or below that number unless they combined him with someone else. Is that accurate?
Yeah, from a cap perspective, there's not really any benefit to trading him. He makes even less than the minimum salary that all the veterans get. So unless a team really likes him and is going to offer like multiple second round picks or something, if the Knicks would rather just capitalize on him, then there's not really any steps to use his salary to bring in like a veteran that makes more.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. We're going to hit quickly an injury update. Mitchell Robinson, we covered him earlier. Thibodeau believes that he's going to be back at practice, cleared for contact by the end of the month. I think there's a degree of confidence that Mitchell Robinson will be back on the floor early, mid-February. So we'll see where that shakes out. The bigger one for the Knicks right now is Karl-Anthony Towns. Obviously, he's got that sprained thumb, also has the bone chip in his thumb, and we had a chance to talk to him about it last night after the net game, and he didn't give us much. He said it is what it is when we asked questions about the injuries and how he feels and what's going on there. But he did acknowledge that it is impacting his shot from deep, and that's concerning for the Knicks. I think Towns is a combined 1 for 9 from beyond the arc in these 2 games since coming back with that injury. And obviously Towns' three-point shooting is so pivotal for this Knicks team because he allows them to spread the floor, to play 5 out, and he's such a weapon from all over the court, but particularly back there. So if he's compromised with his shooting, that changes a lot for the Knicks. I have to assume, though, he'll get to a place where he's more comfortable as the days go by here. But Alex, your level of concern here, do your eyebrows raise when you hear about Towns and him confirming that the injury is impacting his shooting from deep?
Yeah, it's very concerning. I would almost consider, sitting him for a couple of games, especially with a bunch of rest days off, coming up, and they have the 5 games straight at home. If the doctors say it's okay, I mean, I'm not going to question the doctors. If they say he's fine, then play, then go ahead, go for it. But if it's something that's going to linger and rest will help it, then, then take off a game or 2. And, especially ones that are sandwiched by 3 to 2 days off, then sure, do it. But if Towns is fine and you can just work through it, then go for it. I love the fact that the Knicks play every game. They respect the game. They're unlike most of the teams in the NBA. They don't take days off. I love that. But you don't want to be stupid either, If jamming his thumb is going to hurt him more, I don't want to, put him out there. But at the same time, the doctors say he's fine. He's fine. So I'm concerned. So the long story short, I am damn concerned about Towns' thumb, because if he goes down for any long period of time, which is, knock on wood, that's going to be really, really dangerous for the Knicks.
Yeah, they'll struggle without him. He did play well last night, even with the limited 3-point shooting. He was great inside the arc, rebounded the ball, scored the ball efficiently, and was fantastic there. So we're done with injuries. We're going to pivot to the Talkback, and we're going to welcome in my friend and yours, Matt Spenley, the Big Spend. He's got questions from you guys to us, and we're going to get right into it.
Nice, Ian. I'm surprised no one's hit me with that nickname before. It feels like an obvious one, right?
Yeah,
It's obvious to me.
What about the medium spend? Can we go with that?
I'm only 5'8" on a good day, so I'll take medium, honestly, because I've been called short a lot of my life. So, my nickname when I was playing youth basketball back in the day was Spoons. So I kind of like the direction you're going. That's better.
Gotta do the Lil, the Lil, the Lil.
I don't know. My boys were doing me dirty out here. Alex, I want to come right back to you because I think a lot of the trade discussion when we're talking about Mitch, it sounds like you and I kind of are on the same page. I just feel like all of these guys we're talking about, I just think Mitchell Robinson is better than these players, and I want to see him come back and get a chance to play. And I know that he's had the injury issues, but we saw how much of an impact he can have in the right matchups. So I guess I just want to know generally what your expectations are for Mitch once he comes back, and if you agree that I would just like to see the team with him and Cat with him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see him come back. He'll definitely help out on the offensive glass as he always does. He'll change the way teams attack the Knicks defensively just by being on the court. Having a guy that can block shots and literally lead the league in blocks. He has that ability. So that doesn't come around often, and he's very athletic if he's completely healthy. That I really want to see what the Knicks are with him, especially since the market is trash. All the guys that are out there are not great, and they're not going to make a difference. Like if you had to trade him in the deal in the offseason for Towns, like, all right, fine, you have to do that. If the Timberwolves for some reason took that deal that was on the table, I think, Ian. And then, I wouldn't just trade him just to trade him. And, I'd love to see what they can get on the buyout market on the other parts of the roster, maybe call up TJ Warren in like March and see how that goes and just go from there. And then in the offseason, reassess everything.
For sure. And I think we spend a lot of time talking about the buyout market, and we will, given the Knicks cap situation. But a lot of times those guys, too, are going to be a very marginal impact when it comes down to it. Yossi, I want to ask quickly about, because right as we were coming on, the Mavs, Derek Lively was ruled out for 2 to 3 months with an injury. I'm just curious because we spent a lot of time kind of talking about center trade market, how things go. And obviously, Dallas' situation, they're going to still look to kind of try to secure a playoff spot here. So their payroll situation, if they're anybody that the Knicks should keep an eye on, not even in terms of major pieces moving, just curious how they might approach that injury.
I would guess that the Mavs they also have the same kind of payroll restrictions as the Knicks right now. And I remember seeing some reports that they were looking to bring in another versatile wing to kind of replace what Derrick Jones brought them. Now I would imagine that's going to be on pause, but I would guess mainly because that would mean trading Maxi Kleber. So I guess that means they're going to keep him now through the trade deadline. If they get any reinforcements, probably just going to be someone making around the minimum, maybe a little more, someone that they can easily plug in. I know they have a trade exception, but also they just got to be able to stay below the first apron. I'm not sure how much space they have below it. They're roughly like, they're right at the first apron, actually. So they're going to have to send out a little something if they're going to make that type of trade. But I would guess they bring in maybe a $2 to $3 million big man, or maybe they just sign someone on a 10-day contract just to, or maybe see what the buyout market looks like. It's kind of rough timing right now with the trade deadline just 2 weeks away.
Right. I got a quick follow-up, sorry, for Yossi, just because I think it's important. The buyout market with the Knicks close to the second apron, what are their limitations there? Because it's not like they can just get anybody who ends up being bought out, right?
Right. The biggest thing is that they can't sign anyone who is making the mid-level exception or more. So the full one, the $12.8 million amount, if they were making exactly that or more, if they were making $1 more than that, they cannot sign that player if he gets bought out. So they're basically limited at just anyone else making below that.
And so like the veterans minimum prorated at that point, they could sneak in under the second apron.
Yeah, they should. If they don't do any other trades, if they don't decrease their payroll through some type of trade, I think they should be able to sign someone as early as like late February or early March to get to that 15th spot. So by then, the buyout market should already play out. Might be a little off on those dates. Maybe they could sign someone a little earlier, but either way, they are well positioned to get to be in the bidding for someone that they are allowed to sign that gets released right in time.
Yeah, well, TJ Warren definitely impressed them in camp, and obviously he's been playing well with the Westchester Knicks, so I certainly would be keeping an eye on him when they go to add that 15th player, and I think they ultimately will. I'm sorry, Matt. Big spend, medium spend. I cut you off. What do we have next?
Ian, it's your show. Come on, you can do whatever you want. I'm just here to serve you. You do. I'm coming right back to you, luckily, and then I want to get Alex's take after. Our guy, the Cooler, is asking, the Knicks are beating up on bottom feeder teams, but have yet to beat the title contenders, OKC, Houston, Boston, Cleveland. Obviously, we've seen, a variety of exposure to those teams so far yet this season, but it's going to be the big conversation. They've definitely, beat up on some of the lower teams, haven't necessarily been able to take down those top title contenders. So how do you feel about the Knicks? Should we be concerned?
I mean, eventually they have to do it, right? I think the Cooler brings up a good point. Eventually you got to beat some of these teams in the regular season to, I think even just to feel good about kind of where you are as a team. Cause the Knicks, I think in that locker room, it's been up and down, wins and losses. And I think they haven't yet kind of coalesced as a unit. I think there's still some kind of disparate parts there. And I think that's natural when you're bringing in all these different pieces that they have brought in. And Josh Hart was saying last night, he was kind of mocking the media for blowing his quotes about egos and individual agendas out of proportion. But he did say the Knicks were still kind of working towards that place where everybody was bought in. They've made progress to get to that place. And so he's saying they're not all the way there yet. And so, yeah, I do think that just from a team building perspective, team cohesion perspective, winning those games will be big. And then obviously just proving it to everybody else. They have Sacramento, they have Memphis coming up. So a good test after these days off here, and we'll see where they land.
Alex, what do you think?
Man, I just kind of zoned out. Can you repeat me the question? I'm sorry, but I was listening, and then I was just
the top teams, like kind of how they've beat up on a lot of the lower teams. There you go.
Honestly, you gotta play who's in front of you. You can't apologize for winning. You got to play who's in front of you. Eventually, they'll beat teams that are the top tier. You're beating. They keep moving the goalposts. First, you're beating, you can't beat over 500 teams. You beat the Hawks, you beat a couple of teams, and then you move the goalposts. You can't beat the top 4 teams in the NBA. Well, the Knicks are one of the top 4 teams in the NBA, 5 teams in the NBA. So, you can't play them every day. You'll get there, and we'll see what happens. I just feel that looking for negativity, a lot of Knicks fans are, and the Knicks, aren't the team from last year. A lot of people think that they're not as good as last year. They're not what they were last year, but they have a better record at this point now than they did last year. So this team is way more talented, and they haven't even played well yet and haven't even clicked yet. So I'm very positive about this team. I just don't dwell on the negative things and worry about these, not beating the top teams in the NBA. It's hard to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're a powerhouse, and they're without 3 of their best players right now, and the Cavs are incredible right now, and the Celtics are the champs. I mean, these guys and these teams are great. So, it's going to be hard to beat them. And, when you play them in a series, you'll have more than one shot at them per month. So, then we'll find out what's going on. But, I think the Knicks will be fine. Long story short.
Just to clarify one quick thing. Was that a Sweeney Murdy Francesa moment? Did anybody see Alex nodding off there? Did we catch him snoozing?
I wasn't snoozing. I was just kind of listening, and then I was just like, all right. And I was making sure my eyes were at the camera, and then I was just like, well, then you went to me. I'm like, oh, shoot. Where was I?
He's got a young child at home. We get it. I love Sweeney, but I want to make sure that I didn't get Francesa there.
Yeah.
I got one final one because the Jets are hiring Aaron Glenn to be their next coach. The news from Schefter just came out right now. So I have other work to do. So we got one final question. Don't worry, we're not missing anything else. Ian's take on Aaron Glenn. No, I'm just kidding. Speaking of the NFL, the final thing I want to bring up is just the Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Commanders, Eagles. Ian kind of stirring the pot a little bit, bringing this up. Now, as a Giants fan growing up, it makes me sad because you love to watch these Knicks, and then seeing these guys root for these teams, especially Brunson and the Eagles, it just hurts. So I want to know what we think about the New York guys being at odds here. And I need everybody's Super Bowl pick.
Ooh. I'm going to start, and I'll just say that there was a bet that was put on the table between Hart and Brunson, and hasn't been agreed to yet, but it would be entertaining if it did come to fruition. I think those guys are still figuring it out, but I would expect some kind of bet between those
sources say. Right.
Yeah, and I'll let someone else go from there.
Well, I'll go. I mean, I think it's going to be Chiefs and Commanders. I think the Chiefs aren't going to lose at home, and the Commanders, I think, are just riding high. I think they're going to get to the Super Bowl, be happy to be there. Chiefs are going to win the third straight, but I think that's where I'm going.
I want to hear my man Yossi.
I don't watch football, but I would guess the Eagles win it all.
All right. That's it, guys. That's what I got today.
I'm happy about Aaron Glenn, though. I'm a Jets fan, man. I'm really happy.
There you go.
That.
See, Alex, I got you.
Bring him home.
You'll always remember that. There you go.
Yes, I will. Thanks, little spin. I appreciate that.
that is. That's
whoa. No little.
Lil.
No little.
Yeah.
Lil. Right, Lil. There you
go. The homestand continues, fellas. As I mentioned, Sacramento, Memphis. They have the Lakers coming up. They're pretty much home until the deadline, which it's been a long stretch of homestand here. And I want to know, Alex, for you, when you look ahead at this stretch, and where do you think the Knicks are? It sounds like they're kind of where you would hope they would be. It doesn't sound like you're worried. It doesn't sound like the sky is falling for you. But obviously these games coming up are going to be tough. Denver, Lakers, Rockets. What are your thoughts generally through this point in the season?
Well, I hope they go at least 3-2 in these next 5, and maybe pick off the Nuggets, and those are tough games. And always playing LeBron at home, he always turns it up at the Garden, and that's gonna be tough. I'm just, I'm happy that the Knicks are playing well. I just am concerned about Towns' thumb, and I went into this year, I said on my podcast, Bad Weather Fans, I'm not going to let anyone bring me down about this year. I've been through hell and back with this team growing up in the 90s. I can't even imagine the Knicks being bad. First time I ever saw the Knicks being bad was in that movie Eddie with Whoopi Goldberg. And, I couldn't even imagine them. Like, it just didn't make any sense to me. I'm 40 years old. It just didn't make any sense. And now it's been, a long way. And like, we have this legit title contending team that's playoff experience, that's, proved that the executives know what they're doing, and the coach has pressed the right buttons. It's just, I'm going to just enjoy the ride here, especially when they continue to win and they're the third seed. So I'm staying positive. I'm going to keep it going. Obviously, if something negative happens, I'll be concerned. They need to stop complaining to the officials so much, Towns especially is just very demonstrative in every call. Sometimes just swallow your pride and just walk up the court. These refs are human. They're going to, take it out on you, whether subconsciously or consciously, so, just take it easy with that. And Tibbs with his comments, just chill a little bit, so that's where I'm at right now. I'm chill as a Knicks fan. I'm trying to just ride the wave of the season and enjoy it. And, the games still get me up and down, but not as high and not as low as they used to in the past. So I'm enjoying the moment.
Very zen of Alex.
Not like me.
Yossi, I want one from you before we wrap. Can you give me one trade deadline prediction? Something maybe we covered or haven't covered. Do you have one for me?
I know you covered the Nets, but I would think the most likely best player who gets traded, more than Jimmy or Levine, or I would guess Cam Johnson gets moved. I think especially now, he's having his best season. Now is the time to capitalize on that.
Yeah, to me too, though, like, you're building something from the ground floor. He just seems like one of those guys that can help you build, but I understand draft picks are there and you need to hoard them. But that will do it for us here on the Putback. Really want to thank Alex B, Knicks Central, co-host of the Bad Weather Fans podcast. Be sure to check him out there. Yossi Gozlan. You can find him on Twitter, on YouTube. Does a great job breaking the cap down for all NBA teams. And we will be back breaking things down for you guys again ahead of the trade deadline. We've got a few shows. So we've got Tuesday, February 4th, 1 p.m., Wednesday, February 5th, 1 p.m., and Thursday, February 6th, live at 2:45 when the trade deadline hits at 3, to cover what's going on with the Knicks, to talk about what they did and did not do So be sure to check us out then on the Putback, and thanks for joining us.
Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like you know to check the date of the big game first, before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.